So welcome everyone to a Blueprint Career Services presentation on an introvert's guide to confident interactions. Next slide, please. First, I'd like to do an access check. Please do let us know in the chat if you can hear me, if you can see the presentation clearly, and if there are any other access needs that might affect your participation. Thank you, everyone. Great. Now I'd like to do a very important land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're so grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. One slide back, please. Thank you. So again, my name is Ann Park, and I am the career strategist here at Blueprint Career Services. I'm so excited to have Luki with us today. But before we begin, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items. Please remember to keep your mics off during the presentation. We encourage you to turn your cameras on during the presentation, as this will improve our guest speakers' engagement with you. Feel free to post questions and comments in the chat during the presentation. And Luki explained that he would be answering questions throughout the presentation, which is fun. Normally we don't do it like that, but I love it. Please note that this session is being recorded and will be posted on our Blueprint Career Services portal, and it will be shared on YouTube. So it will be shared on our portal, a taping of it, audio recording in about a week's time, and in about 2 weeks it will be shared on YouTube. Next slide, please. So before I have the pleasure of introducing our incredible guest speaker, Luki, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Blueprint Career Services and what we do here beyond our amazing free panels, such as the one that we're presenting today. So we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so having over 20 years of experience in similar roles, I am working with such a wide variety of folks over the years. I just want to know from all of you, what do you think is the most common question that I get asked? So you can just share in the chat, please. I'd love to hear what you think. Any ideas? What question do you think that people commonly ask me? Any ideas? How can I find a job? Can I buy you dinner? Thanks, Judy. What job pays the most? Those are all good. Yeah. Any other guesses? What do you think is the #1 question I get asked? How do I improve my people skills? Yeah, that's a good one. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we're here today. What do you do? Career transition? Yeah. These are all very common questions that I get asked, but I would say that probably, networking tips, these are all really good guesses. The #1 thing that I get asked is, can you guarantee that by working with me, I will get a job? And my answer to that is no. I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee that by working with me, I will work tirelessly to help you to achieve your goals using a strengths-based approach. You can move on to the next slide, please. That's me. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Great. And so I would say about 90% or more of the folks I've worked with over the years through my support are able to achieve their career goals. And I can tell you from my experience in utilizing the support of career professionals that working with such individuals has changed my life. And I know that sounds a little bit extreme, but it really has. And, I've been reflecting on this in my LinkedIn post for those of you who follow me. And some of the advice that I've received, I've reflected on it throughout the years, even after I received their support, and it's really helped to elevate my career to the next level. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Let me go through briefly what we provide here at Blueprint Career Services. We provide career nav. That's a fancy way of saying one-on-one career strategist sessions with me. Those are 1 hour in length. And if you would like to find out more information about the approaches that I use or the structure of those, check out our website. But really, I use a client-centered approach. Next, we have something called the Clifton Strengths Workshop, which is fantastic. Today we're talking about networking and chatting with individuals. Well, key to that is having a self-awareness of your strengths and how those can benefit others. So the Clifton Strengths Workshop entails an assessment that you would do online, identifying your top themes, which are strengths, then attending the 3-hour workshop. The first part explains the science behind Clifton's strengths, and then finding out how to use your strengths to elevate your career. And then, of course, we have a one-on-one session with me. I facilitate everything here at Blueprint Career Services. So that session gives me the opportunity to work further on your strengths and discuss how to use those strengths to elevate your career and using that individualized approach. We also have something called the Alternative Careers Workshops, which are for those who are transitioning from professional careers and looking to transition into new careers. And then, of course, we have a Real Talk and Industry Insights panel. As you know, the Real Talk is what you're here for today. And we identify specific topics of interest as they pertain to employment. We have fantastic guest speakers such as Luki, who chat about these topics. But we also have something called Industry Insights panel. So those are offered every other month. They're free, they're online as well. And for those, obviously, we choose specific industries that we feel might interest folks. And we have experts chat about those industries and share their insights. The one that we're going to be having next month, just so that is on the human resource industries. So that's really exciting. For more information, you can always email me at ses.blueprint@utoronto.ca, or you can ask questions about us in the chat. Next slide, please. And of course, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, follow me, and you'll be connected with our latest exciting updates on our offerings here at Blueprint for Services. Great. Now I have the pleasure to introduce our amazing guest speaker, Luki Danukariento. And Luki is a career coach who's found his purpose in helping others to find theirs. He is an educator and the author of Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, and host of a podcast of the same name, which is a far cry from the shy, introverted kid he was growing up. He's a former Big Four management consultant and campus recruiter. Connect and learn more about Luki by visiting his LinkedIn page. He also has a very popular YouTube channel, which I had an opportunity to visit. It's fantastic. Sign up. It's incredible. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Luki.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you so much for the UT School of Continuing Studies for having me in this session. Can everybody see my screen? All right, I have a few thumbs up there, and everybody can hear me okay? I'm guessing a few heads nod. So again, thank you so much for taking time on your Wednesday afternoon to join in the session, really for networking as an introvert. So thank you to those that are on camera. I think I acknowledge a few of you, also Rodrigo from Tapestry Community Capital, Rainbow, and Ignacy, and Balakumar. And well, it looks like Anita's on there, but I think she just has a really nice picture there. But really appreciate everybody who's on camera. So for those of you who checked me out before, my name is Luki Danukariento, and no, there's not going to be a test on how to spell my last name at the end of the session, so don't worry about that. But most folks are curious where it came from, and I'm actually Indonesian. So I was born in Jakarta, but the fun fact is when my dad was born, he was a Tan. So for those that know Chinese lineage, I'm actually ancestrally Chinese. So we're part of the Chan lineage, right? So for those that know Chinese last names, but due to some civil unrest in the country, he had to change it or else. And he got a little bit too creative. So if any of you are in Indonesia and need a resourceful worker then apparently you can ask for a Danu Karyanto and hopefully they'll get you one. So I was born in Indonesia and I moved to Canada when I was very young, hence the accent here. I grew up in the Toronto area. I went to school at U of T, the Scarborough campus, and I did a degree in computer science. And I was that stereotypical computer scientist, the shy, introverted kid in the corner, to the point where at one point I was emceeing my sister's wedding. And then we had a family friend that came up to me afterwards. And this was someone that when we were growing up, we hung out on a regular basis every month, if not every week. And they said, Lukey, you're so different than when you grew up because for a while, I didn't even know that you could talk. Right. So I had that kind of stereotypical shy introverted ness of it. And then I kind of grew into out of my shell because when I went to school in university, I had found a study cube. If you know those kind of desks with like three walls in on the side that kind of give you a bit of privacy, if you know that, yeah. So I went to class, and I found a study cube. I went to class, I found a study cube. Class, study cube. I probably had lunch in there too. Class, study cube, and I did that for my first year. I did that for my second year. I did that for my third year. And then I had what I call my WTF moment because what the, like, that sounds like a pretty pathetic life to me. And for whatever reason, which I'm trying to figure out, which I haven't yet, but I decided to have a conversation with the person beside me. And that conversation, it sucked. It was probably the most awkward conversation you can think of. That was probably it. But I found a quote that I now live by. I never lose, either win or I learn. So it not a loss because I don't lose, but it should have been. Definitely not a win. Super awkward conversation. So what did I learn? Well, I learned you don't just jump into a conversation, you break the ice first. And then the next conversation, it was better. It still wasn't good, but it was better. And the next one, better, 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 better. And eventually, I got over it and started improving to the point where now I'm teaching courses on networking, but I'm still naturally an introvert. So after the session, I'll be like, I'm glad this is over. So I'll have to recharge my energy banks and refill my reserves so that I can potentially do this again. So that's kind of me at the beginning. And I ended up doing a career as a computer science. I started coding. I joined a company called Deloitte, and I was in their technology transformation group for over 12 years. And then in 2015, I decided to leave that as a senior manager who was on their way to be groomed to be a partner. I decided to shut all that down and become a career coach. And as Anne mentioned, I like to say that I found my purpose, helping others find theirs. And my platform is Swike, the stuff I wish I knew earlier, which basically is, I wish they were teaching soft skills in school. So how to network, emotional intelligence, effective communication, time management, even learning to learn. How come those aren't courses that we can have? And this is me, all the stuff that I wish I knew. And sometimes I didn't know that I needed to know as well, right? This is the things that I share with folks, and hopefully they'll have the benefit of my failures in the past as well. So that's a little bit about me. And I'd love if, oh, I didn't change the slide. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. So folks can pepper in the chat a little bit. I think some of people already shared where they're joining from. If you are UT alum as well, for the late joiners, you can put that in. But I really want, for those who have already filled those, two numbers, right? How would you rate your introversion, right? So if you're a 0, that means I'm shy, introverted, and I almost don't even want to press enter on this to put it out publicly. And if you're 10, you're like, I'm basically an extrovert, and I'm actually here so that I can learn how to talk to my introverted friends. And in the number 5, you're somewhere in the middle, right? So we have some outgoing, a little bit more outgoing folks, a little bit more introverted folks. Ooh, we have a negative in a couple of those, right? And if you want to share a little bit about what do you want to get from the session? Is there anything specific that you would want to learn? And I might be able to tailor some of the content to that, or we'll probably cover that in a slide. So if there's anything specific, then I can change that. We could have a couple of 0s, and I would give you at least a 1 because the fact that you even put it out there is a little bit good. Oh, literally scored 100% on Myers-Briggs. So that's scientifically proven. That's great. And again, for those that are willing and able to be on camera, so thank you, Judy, who joined as well, Arma, and then Sad. Thank you so much for joining on camera. So I'll let the comments go a little bit. But what we'll cover is a little bit on introversion, right? What it is and possibly what it isn't, because sometimes people have this incorrect notion of what introversion is. Then we'll get into effective networking and how introversion plays into that whole context. And then we'll give you a little bit of a plan to level up your networking skills. So, and my promise to you is by the end of the session, especially if you're an introvert, you'll be a little bit more comfortable, if not a lot more comfortable, in networking and getting out there to build meaningful connections. Does that work for everybody here? Say, type yes in the chat or give me a thumbs up in there. There you go. Appreciate that. All right, so what is an introvert? So if I grab the dictionary definition, it says a shy and reticent person. I actually don't really like that definition because I don't think it's entirely true. Who are the extroverts in the group? Is there anybody who's an extrovert out here? Now we have a couple of hands up, right? So hopefully you're there to try to talk to the extroverts. I used to ask in a group, who are the introverts here? And nobody ever put up their hand. So now I go to the extroverts on that side. If you actually look at the psychological definition, I think it comes from Carl Jung, where he says it's the attitude type characterized by orientation in life through subjective psychic contents, which basically means you focus more on yourself. I like to use the definitions where it's someone who gets their energy from a small group of people, sometimes just being on their own, right? And the analogy that I like to use is that of a coin pouch, right? So if you can imagine that an introvert wakes up in the morning with a pouch of coins that are full, but every time they talk to someone, they have to give one of those away, right? So if I didn't talk to anybody, my pouch is full. I'm good, right? If I talk to 10, 100 people, it's empty and it's negative balance in there, right? Now, an extrovert is different. When they wake up, they have an empty coin pouch. So when they meet someone, they actually get a coin. Every time at the end of the day, if they meet a lot of people, they're rich, they're full. If they didn't meet anybody, they're a little bit broke and a little bit empty, right? So it's almost the opposite. And if you understand that, that can actually change things, because being an introvert does not mean that you are shy. I actually call myself an outgoing introvert, right? And people ask, well, does that mean that there's such thing as a shy extrovert? And absolutely, right? So I know a couple of extroverts that they love to be around people, but they never want to initiate the interactions, right? Once they get into it, then they're the life of the party and doing whatever, but they don't want to be the one that initiates. So shy and introverted is a little bit different. So we talked about introversion, extroversion. Shy versus outgoing, right? Are you willing to make that first move? Start the conversation, go out of your way and smile at them, say hi and engage in the conversation. And sometimes some of you aren't actually either of them. You're just new or you haven't practiced before. So does anybody know how to play an instrument, right? Anybody here know how to play the violin? Put yes if you do. But for those that you don't, right? What if I told you, I gave you a violin and I said, play? What do you think that would sound like? Probably like something like that, right? So if I say network, what do you think is going to happen? Basically the networking code. Because for many of you, it's not that you are introverted, you're actually just new. You haven't practiced. And you can actually develop that skill. And some of you who are English language learners, you're actually not introverted. You're just introverted in English, in a new language, in a new culture, in a new area or whatever. So sometimes you put these labels on yourself, but you don't necessarily, you're not actually that person. Some of you are true introverts, and it's a matter of taking that understanding and moving forward with that. So what I'll give you in this session is a bunch of tools to help you be a little more outgoing and to develop those skills in order to get past kind of your introverted tendencies. So if we dive into the other side, well, we're talking about networking. So what is that? And that's interacting with people, the process of connecting and exchanging information and developing those social contacts. Well, at least that's what the dictionary says. And the stereotypical one is you go to an event, you hand out business cards, or you're on LinkedIn and you connect with people, you engage on posts and things like that. But many people don't appreciate that you're networking every day. Did anybody interact with someone? Did anybody buy coffee today? Well, technically, that could have been networking, right? If you got lunch and we're talking to someone there, uh, you could have networked with them. In any interactions, you can network with someone. And that's an opportunity to practice to be maybe a little bit less shy and just a tad bit more outgoing. You'll still be an introvert because you'd rather keep to yourself. But if you can understand your tendencies and work with them, then that would help as well. Now, networking to me has a bit of a challenge in terms of marketing. So I like to use a different term, which I'll get to a little bit better. And I call it building meaningful connections. But networking is so important in life, in your career, in two major areas, right? So for those of you, anybody here on the job search, if you want to type job search, you can put it in there, right? It is super important on there because essentially, the job search is actually quite easy. It's very simple to get a job. To get a job, you need offers. To get offers, you need interviews. To get interviews, you need to either apply or network. Simple. Now, simple doesn't mean easy, right? If you think about it, if your goal is to get an interview anyway, then networking is really just an informal interview. Whether you like it or not, this person's probably judging you. This person's probably evaluating on whether or not you would be a great fit for the team. So if that's your goal anyway, you might as well start there. So that's one reason. If you network, then you're going to be top of the heap. And if you take a look at, has anybody seen like LinkedIn and like how many people have applied to a role? It's like going up to hundreds. I've seen one with like 2,600 applications for one. It's ridiculous these days. It used to be like under 100, that sort of thing. Now the numbers are just skyrocketing. So you can either go in that pool or in a more select group where you're referred in through a network, through a connection, right? Now, for those of you who are professionals, right, if you want to put career in the chat, if you have a job and maybe want to get to the next level, right, then oftentimes it's even more important, especially the higher up in the chain that you want to be. If you're at like the director's executive levels, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And you've probably heard that expression before. And for me, it's actually not about who you know, it's about who knows you, right? It's the adage where a lot of people on LinkedIn will have hundreds. They're aiming for like the plus 500 connections, right? Some people have thousands of connections, tens of thousands. But how many of them do you actually know? And more importantly, how many of them actually know you, right? So that's a challenge. And then people, I've had someone call me out and say, hey, Lukey, I see that you have like 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, right? Does that mean that you know all of them? It's like, well, I probably in one sense or another, I've interacted with them in one shape or form. And then they say, okay, smart Alec, right? Does that mean all of them know you? And say, I'm not sure, but I can guarantee that I have messaged every single one of them. Now, the interesting thing is not everyone replies, which is kind of my saving grace. Otherwise, I'd be forever living on LinkedIn, but I do spend a lot of time. So I do practice what I preach in terms of building those meaningful connections and engaging with folks. So for those of you who ever want to aspire to do more than kind of that individual contributor role, get into management, senior levels, then relationships are super important. And they're really a multiplier for your results. Has anybody taken philosophy? Did you hear that quote of, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Have you ever heard of that one? And if you haven't, imagine like tree falls, meow, boom, but no one's there. Did it actually make a boom? Not sure. So my follow on to that is, if you did a good job and no one knows about it, did you really? Think about that. You created the world's greatest report. It's going to transform lives. And it just sits in a drawer. right? But what if one person knows? What if 10 people know? What if 100 people know? Well, then it could be truly quality work. So it's a multiplier for your success. Just be mindful of that. People are important. Humans are tribal, humans are social animals, and whether you're truly social, it's a matter of that's kind of built into our evolution. So a lot of the folks just having those fundamental basics, understanding that introversion is where you get your energy, means that you don't have to be shy. You can be outgoing if you want to. And with a little bit of work, a little bit of practice, just like any skill, you can be better. So when I talk about networking, effective networking to me is building meaningful connections, right? So it's 4 real areas where it starts with your mindset. First of all, knowing that you can do it, wanting to do it, and then making connections, right? You need to reach out to people, making them meaningful, and then building on them. So we'll go into each of those contexts and then dive into from a networking, from an introversion context. So mindset. For any of you who have kids, then you might know that a lot of the school system is having this concept of a growth mindset, right? You can do it. And it's typified by the quote from Henry Ford, where it says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So it's a matter of belief and saying, if I can do it, I can have a conversation with this person. I can network with them. Now, if you don't believe it, you might still be able to have a conversation with this person, but it's just going to be that much harder. So might as well believe to make it a little bit easier and have that growth mindset. And it's the opposite of a fixed mindset, which I admit that I used to have in spades when I was growing up, right? I was too smart for my own good. So I was one of the lucky ones where I was identified gifted, right? And I went through the school system thinking I was all smart. But now with a fixed mindset, that means I didn't have to study. I was just naturally smart. So you can get away with it in elementary school, sort of get away with it in high school. If you don't study in university, I nearly failed out of my first year. So that's what happened. I got a letter from the registrar saying, you better shape up, or else we're not going to let you continue on. And then I realized that, oh, actually, if I put in the work, if I put in the effort, then I'll be able to get better and know more. And it took me a long time to realize that. But it's something that with the effort, with the right amount of effort and the right effort, then you can definitely grow. So I had to learn the hard way that growth is possible. Now, the other aspect of networking is you want to make it about the other person, not about you, right? And it's typified by this quote from Zig Ziglar, where he says, you can have everything in life you want if you help others get what they want. Now, the challenge and trick is to figure out what other people want, because sometimes it's not very apparent. And when you make it about the other person, then it becomes a lot more easy in terms of the process. And it's about making progress versus perfection. So I saw a couple of people, they put 2s, 3s, negatives, whatever. The goal is not to, by the end of the session, be a 9 out of a 10. The goal is to turn that 3 into 3.5, that 3.5 to a 4, that 4 to a 5, 6, 7, and eventually you'll be playing or whatever you can on whatever instrument going forward. So expect some awkward conversations, expect some not so great feelings in the whole process, but realize, now I'm better because I went through that process and I can grow and progress towards that perfection. And oftentimes it's helped if you manage your mindset. And I actually have a whole other course on mindset, but doing things like journaling and understanding what went well today and what could you do better. Mindfulness. Is anybody on the mindfulness and meditation train? Yeah, it's super important. For those, you can probably share a lot of how important and helpful it can be. So experiment with that and see what works for you. That can be very helpful. And some of you might need some more coaching, and some of you might actually need some therapy. And there's no shame in that. This is one thing where we're all dealing with something. So it's up to you to go ask for the help so that you can have that amazing life that you want. All right, so you got your mindset kind of out there. And one item that I'd like to share is the answer to every how to network question to be effective in networking is to care. Now, the great thing is oftentimes introverts are really good at that because they introspect on themselves and they want to make it and care about the other person, right? Not entirely true for everybody, but on the whole, a lot of folks do like to care. And I want you to change the perspective of networking because most people, what they're doing is they're hunting, right? They're trying to find the person who can hire them, the person who can refer them, the person who can review their resume, and then eventually, boom, if you shoot that animal, it's gone, right? But what if instead you went and farmed, you planted seeds, you reached out to someone and you planted a seed, and then you came back and you watered it. You came back, took away the weeds, you came back and fertilized it, you came back, gave it some sun. What's going to happen? Oh, here's some fruit. And the great thing is you can come back later. Here's more fruit. Here's sweeter fruit, riper fruit, better fruit, and bushels of fruit out there. But that is dependent on how much you put in, right? Has anybody heard the expression, the more you give, the more you receive? Yeah, I see a couple of head nods. Has anybody heard the expression, the more you receive, the more you receive? Nope, neither have I. People often miss about the giving. So oftentimes folks network with the expectation that they're going to get. Okay, I'm going to have a coffee chat with this person and they're going to give me a job. I'm going to connect with this person and they're going to refer me to someone. But again, the more you give, the more you receive. So start with giving, start with caring as well. And a different perspective that you might want to take to adjust your mindset is oftentimes, if you want to know if you're networking correctly, you want to put what you're doing in the context of dating. And for some folks, what they'll realize is, oh my gosh, what I've been doing is basically saying, hey, how's it going? How's everything? Would you like to marry me? No. Can you at least take me out to dinner or a movie first before you pop the question? Because if you go up to someone and say, hey, how's it going? I have 15 years of experience and blah, 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 blah. Can you get me a job? That's the same thing. You're basically popping the question before they even know anything about you. So take the time to understand what it is that they want, make it about them, and then your perspectives will change and your relationships will change as well. And this doesn't just go for networking for jobs or businesses. This often helps with interpersonal relationships as well, right? So that's the mindset part. When we go into connections, these are the people that you know or should know. So I like to use the acronym FRANK in order to figure out who you know, right? These are the people that you want to connect to and deepen your relationships a little bit. And they're really practice, right? So FRANK stands for friends, relatives, acquaintances, neighbors, and kids. And a lot of you, if any of you bank with Scotiabank, you're richer than you think. You know more people. Your network is more populated than you can imagine and can appreciate, right? So friends, you're already talking to them. Relatives probably as well. But acquaintances, those could be coworkers, those could be classmates, those could be that person in pickup volleyball, basketball, or in their book club or whatever. What do you know about them? And more importantly, what do they know about you? If you can start engaging those conversations, you already have some commonality anyways. So you might as well further and develop that relationship. Sometimes it's neighbors. Does anybody here like walk their dog or see that couple that has a dog out there? Why not stop and say hi and continue on? Or I bumped into my neighbor when we take out the garbage and it's usually, hey, hey. But why not turn that into a little bit more of a conversation? And if you can get past the feeling of, oh, what do they think or whatever, then that relationship can actually nurture and develop. So those are the people that you do know. And then I use an acronym HARRY, or in the order WAHIRA, to figure out who you should know. So we're talking about the job search, and even in your careers, you should connect with people who are you in the future. So job searchers, who has the job that you want? Wouldn't it make sense to understand what they do, how they got there, and what have you? They can give you their own blueprint. You might not be able to follow it exactly, but you should at least know. How about hiring managers? And hiring managers are basically your future boss. So not the person in the position you're in, but the seniors, senior managers, directors, or whatever in that role that you want. They should probably know who you are as well, because they'll ultimately make the decision on yes or no for you. influencers. These might be people in your industry. So if you're in the marketing field or computer science or whatever it is, people who are talking about it, posting on LinkedIn or what have you, people that you see present, because they often know people. How about recruiters? They're good to know. People often recruit for a certain area where you might have like tech recruiters or finance recruiters or whatever recruiters. They're great folks to know. And then the A is a catch-all, really anyone of interest. And you can practice at events. You can do meetups, interest groups, or whatever. You can do it online on LinkedIn. If anybody's ever used forums or their services where you can find people's emails, because it's usually like first name, last name at whatever.com. Oftentimes you can get access to people there. But really what I encourage folks to do is start every day. Just that person that you expect to meet for lunch, for whatever, further that conversation. Take a minute to just say hi. And you'd be surprised at when you're talking to someone, let's say that the cashier that's bagging your groceries. Hi, how's it going? How's your day going today? Something as simple as that will brighten your day. So I encourage all of you to do what I call a network audit and take a look at Frank, take a look at Harry, and see who you do know and who you should know, and then build a little plan to connect with them. Yeah, and waiting in the line for a coffee can be a great time. So as suggested by Shauna. And I encourage you to start where you are. So if I mention any of these areas and you kind of cringed, I don't want to do any of these, well, start where you are. Who could you know a little bit more? So if you're a student, that person in class that you see every day and say hi to, can you engage in a conversation? I mentioned your neighbors. I mentioned maybe a colleague, that person whose office or cubicle you pass by, the person that sits with you on the GO train or the TTC, right? Who might you be able to further? A very simple thing that I do is practice smiling at people, right? It's a simple thing, because when you smile at someone, what's the natural reaction? They smile back. And you might say, oh, that seems really weird, right? But the thing is, with that, it only seems weird for you because it's all in here. It's all in your head. I often tell my clients, your problem is 6 inches big. The problem is those 6 inches are between your ears, right? And I'll show you that with a bit of an example. So can everybody kind of interlace and cross their hands together? This, can you do that? Okay, so everybody doing it. Now, what I want you to do, so you'll have one hand or one finger at the top and the other one below. What I want you to do is switch it the other way. So put the other fingers on that. And you'll be doing this like, ooh, that feels really weird. That feels really odd because you're not used to it, right? But if I were to say, is this me naturally? Or is this me naturally? How about this or this? Could you even tell? Like, am I feeling weird right now or am I not? So for you, you're like, this doesn't feel good at all. But for other people, it's like, I don't know. Did you cut your hair? I'm not sure. Like, I can't tell anything different. So oftentimes it's just in your head. And all you need to do is get out of your head and take a little bit of action. And the interesting thing is after you hold that other pose for a while, it starts feeling normal. So it goes back to practice, it goes back to a skill. You do it more and more, it starts feeling normal. It's feeling okay. It's like, okay, yeah, it felt weird when I smiled at that person. Now it's normal. It felt weird to say hi to that person. Now it feels normal. So a lot of it is just turning from new to a little bit more practiced, to a little bit more prepared, as I mentioned before. And oftentimes it starts with a little bit of self-awareness. So what you might want to do is to understand yourself. If for any of you who are, again, philosophy, there's a quote that's often put, I think it's the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself, right? Because oftentimes you feel awkward or don't want to say because you don't know what you're going to say. No. So what you want to do is ideally prepare what I call your Lego blocks. And these are your little stories that you can assemble just like Lego in different combinations. And you can start talking about your most recent experiences. You can do what you're most proud of, what you're best known for, what you're interested in, or something that you're looking forward to. Because each and every one of you have these little stories. But sometimes on the spot, if someone asks you, what are you best known for? You'll be like, I'm not really sure. Versus if you practice and rehearse and assemble those Lego blocks, then it'll be easy. So get to know yourself and practice a little bit can go a long way. And then it's also the concept of being a storyteller. So my mom, she's talks a lot and says a bunch of things, but she tends to ramble. She goes into excruciating detail of this. So when I went to dinner yesterday, we took the left door inside the restaurant, and then when we pulled the chair, we went in and we sat two beside each other. I'm like, Mom, please speed it up. So for those of you who are a little bit of ramblers, then what you want to do is, instead of going for all the details, focus on the emotion, right? Because that's the commonality between humans, right? We like stories because oftentimes they have emotion. So when you talk about doing a multi-million-dollar transformation for a Fortune 500 client, a lot of people be like, okay. But if you can instead say, I was excited to be able to do this transformation, and I was super proud to be able to share my wisdom and knowledge with a whole bunch of new people. People know what it's like to be excited. People know what it's like to be proud. So if you can start practicing including those emotional words in your language, then you'll find that people engage with you more instead of just giving random lists of stats and statistics. And by the way, this will probably help you with interviewing as well for those of you who are in that process. So, and then what you want to do is take a minute to reflect and improve, right? Reflect on that. And you can create some icebreakers. So I mentioned in my intro that you want to break the ice. So I will often recommend folks to do a bit of a name introduction. So if you're meeting someone in person, if you actually were to meet me in person, I would probably say, hi, I'm Lukey. It's like Luke with an I or Loki with a U. Any MCU fans? Marvel? No? And for those that know, they'll be like, ha, 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 yeah, that's cool. And then for other people, they're like, huh? And then I'll have to explain it. And then by doing that, we'll have built a little bit more of a connection. You'll get to know me a little bit more, right? So how could you make your name a little bit more interesting? And the other part is, remember that expression, if you want to get anything, you have to know what the other person wants. To make it about them, to care, right? What would be a helpful skill is to actually remember the other person's name, right? So you can do that for them. And if you were to meet me, okay, Lukey, you can imagine me with like the green and like the horns, if you've seen the movies and stuff like that, or whatever it is that would help you remember me. And by remembering someone else's name, then that definitely shows me that you care. You can also create an elevator pitch, right? You can go on YouTube and figure out what's the best one, share a little bit about you so that people relate. Again, try to go for those emotions will be helpful. And then get some conversation starters, right? So it's, what do you do for a living? It's probably the most boring one that you can come up with, but something to break the ice and get to know the other person a little bit more, right? So if you're in an event, obviously this is something that you can do. And ideally you research a little bit beforehand. You understand who's going to be there, what you can talk about, what you might want to talk about. You can put that in there as well. And as a bit of a goal or a benchmark is, as you get started, when you're at an event, try to connect with one person every 10 to 15 minutes, right? So if you're in there for an hour, you should probably have 5 to 6 LinkedIn connection requests, emails, business cards in there, just to show that you've been effective there, right? Ideally, go early or stay late, because you'd be surprised at how much magic happens when you're early, right? You're talking to the organizers and maybe even helping them set up, or you stay late and talking to the people that really enjoyed the event and maybe even helping them to tear down what's happening and building those connections. There's that automatic emotion that's in there. For those that love events, you can try to find one of those high traffic areas. So if you don't want to go out and say hi to people, right, try to find right after registration or right after the food and the drinks. Those tend to be the high traffic areas, and people will be coming to you because after they got their beverage, after they got their food, they'll turn over and say, oh, hey, how's it going? And they'll engage in conversation. So by doing things like that, you can put things into your favor in order to get people to come to you. And one of the most important parts of networking to me is the follow-up, right? It's, yes, you met a connection, but that person might have met 5, 100 people that day. And the ones that really stand out are the ones that follow up. So for job seekers, super important. For those that are looking to elevate their own careers, then you can pick and choose who you follow up with. But in networking, you never know. With all of these, you just practice, practice, practice. And we'll do a little bit on LinkedIn for any of you who are on LinkedIn. It has the functionality where you can add a connection request, right? So you can click on it and it'll say add note, and you ideally want to send a note, right? If you don't send a note on LinkedIn, it's the in real life equivalent of going up to someone at a networking event, tapping them on the shoulder, and then going, did anybody feel a little bit awkward at that point? Because you get a connection request and you're like, okay, yes, why do you want to talk to me? Versus a little bit of a note. Hi, Lukey, we met at the so-and-so event, or we connected with this, or you know this person, or I really like what you did. Whatever it is, that commonality, that opens it up a little bit. Now, LinkedIn has put in a restriction where you're only allowed, I think, like 5 connection requests in a month. So you might have to get the premium if you're really actively connecting with folks. But I don't work for LinkedIn, and it's not a plug. But sometimes if you want to leverage the functionality, you kind of have to bite the bullet. And with connections, you're not going to be perfect. So I like what I call the 10-6-3-1 rule. If you connect with 10 people, 6 will ignore you, 3 will say no, and 1 will change your life. Maybe not in that order, but or sometimes it's 99 or 99 and 1, but there are people that are super helpful. And I like to call them the unicorns, right? You'll connect with someone, hey, how's it going? Good, 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 fine, whatever. And then someone's like, oh, you need some help? I'll help you. You need a referral? I'll help you. You need this? I'll help you. And once in a while, you will get one of those, and hopefully you can get them sooner than later. And oftentimes, a bit of testing can help. So if any of you are in marketing or in computer science, doing some A/B testing, change your connection request and tweak it. Okay, it's working more often when I use these words versus this word, right? So just to be aligned that you can't be successful. And if you're getting responses from about 10% of people online, that's a pretty good response rate. Now, we spent a whole bunch of time connecting with people. Now, how do we make them meaningful? So we start by having small talk, right? Being a little bit curious about folks, and then using a concept called conversational threading, right? And then adding value and reflecting. So I'll go into each one of them at a high level. But oftentimes people ask, okay, so we connected with someone and we had a good conversation at that event. Can I ask them for a coffee chat? Right? Because that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And people often ask, when? Do I ask right away or not? Remember going back to the analogy of dating, right? Do you want to meet someone and say, hey, do you want to go out to dinner right away before you've met and kind of built the rapport and built some commonality? Maybe not. So it depends on the skill of the person on building that connection with the person. Sometimes you can ask right away. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So it's a bit of an issue where ideally you want to build some rapport first. And there's a concept in networking called an informational interview. Has anybody heard of that term? To connecting with people to learn a little bit more about them. I actually do not like that term. And the main reason being if it's informational, it sounds like that you're just digesting and downloading, and it's an interview, right? You're just asking questions. It's almost like you're interrogating. I like to use the term a curiosity conversation instead. Because 1, it takes out the pretense of it's for a job, and 2, it's two-way. They get to learn about you and you get to learn about them, right? It's not just a one-sided interrogation. So how about this and this. If you make it more about them versus you, but also get them to know you as well, then that's when trust can happen. And even though people tell you to do coffee chats, it can be virtual, like via Zoom or Teams or Google Meet or whatever, right? So something for you to think about. And when you have one of these coffee chats, you want to prepare. Just like going to an event, you want to do some research, prepare your stories, have a list of questions if you're going to, even send it ahead of time. And is there a particular goal that you want to have by the end of the session? A specific set of questions, a specific whatever. And again, if you make it not about the job, not about you, make it about them, then it'll be a much more pleasant experience. So when you have the conversation, then you want to engage in small talk, right? And two useful acronyms are HEFI and FORD, right? HEFI are hobbies, entertainment, food, and environment. So a lot of people like talking about their hobbies, right? Entertainment, movies, music, things like that. People like talking about that. Food, most people like talking about food, at least the good food that they've had recently. And environment, that could be the weather, that could be the venue that you're in or whatever, right? But that's kind of very shallow surface level. And next level is FORD, which is family, right? Some people like talking about family, but usually you have to build some rapport first. You don't want to say, how's it going? How you doing? How's everything with your wife and kids? It's like, well, I don't really know you yet, so I don't want to talk about it. But after you've built some rapport, it's open. It's often open. People often like talking about their families. Not everybody, but some people. Occupation, because it's a professional connection, at least in the context we're talking about. Recreation is really HEFI. And then dreams. And I'm not talking about what you dreamed last night. It's more of what are your goals and hopes for the future. So those are the superficial or the general small talk items. And if you really want to get advanced in terms of developing rapport and all that, there's a concept called matching and mirroring that you can do. And part of it is not just matching the body language, but also their voice as well. So matching is, can everybody put up their left hand? Okay, your left hand, then we're matching because your left hand and my left hand are up. Now put up your right hand. That's mirroring because it's like you're looking into a mirror. So what you can do, and they'll teach it in advanced sales training, is if you're leaning towards the left, then you can lean towards the left. If you're leaning on your right leg, they can lean on your right leg. Now, there is a very fine line between matching and mirroring and mimicking, right? And that fine line is when they notice. They're like, whoa, every time I move, then you move too, right? Once they notice, then that's not a good place to be. And you can also do it based on their voice as well. So I tend to speak very quickly. And I've had to learn to slow down my speech. And when I get excited, I still speak quickly. But I know some people that take their time when they speak. And you probably know a couple of people that do that as well. And imagine someone who speaks like this runs into someone who speaks like this, someone who speaks like me and just can't go any slower and speaks like a mile a minute. How do you think that conversation will go? Boom. So if you notice that someone's speaking a little bit quicker and you're a slow talker, maybe speed it up. And if you're a fast talker, maybe slow it down for the slower talkers. So those types of things where you can match and mirror however they behave, whether it's body language or voice or whatever, then that could make for a better conversation as well. And part of that is just the self-awareness in it. And we talked about feelings and emotions. And if you can bring more of that into the conversation, then you'll connect more with that person. And two super helpful phrases that I found is, and how about you? And that's interesting. Tell me more. Right. So I've had my very fair share of awkward conversations where like, I don't know what to say. So those two phrases have been super helpful in like 90% of all conversations. So if they ask you a question, you answer it. And how about you? Right. And the other part is, so let's say they didn't ask you a question. Why don't you listen to something they said? Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. So those two phrases can be super helpful for those that go into small talk. And some of you will still say, I hate small talk. I do not like it at all. It is not fun, right? And that's because you're using all the generic stuff and talking about stuff that you don't want to. So if you hate small talk, why don't you talk about stuff that you want to? So pick the HEFI area, pick the FORD area that you're interested in. If you're a music buff, talk about music. Don't talk about the weather, right? If you're interested in food, talk about food. Don't talk about the current events or news, right? If that is not what you're into, don't talk about that. And this is how you can develop yourselves in terms of improving your small talk by talking things that you're interested in and also understanding what they're interested in as well. And you can practice your Lego blocks by using what's called conversational threading. Because one mistake that people often make when they're networking is they start interrogating folks. question after question after question after question. But then, sure, you know a lot about me, but I know nothing about you, right? That's not going to make me want to go on that date with you any sooner if I know nothing about you. So something that's helpful is adding to the conversation, right? Disclosing a little bit. And some simple phrases is they say something, oh, I did that as well, or I did something similar, or I haven't done that before. Can you tell me more about it? Or a good helpful phrase as you learn to navigate conversation is that reminds me of, and then move it into that. So by adding to the conversation for your own stories, your own Lego blocks, your own whatever, then that'll make them be able to understand you a little bit more than yourself, than you just listening to them. And one thing that you need to develop is your skill of listening. So most folks don't actually realize there's actually 5 different levels of listening. Some of you speak just waiting for your turn. You're actually not paying attention. You're just waiting for a break and pause in the conversation so that you can say something, right? Some of you, and this is often true with your significant others, where you can repeat everything that they said, but you didn't actually learn. You're in an argument with a significant other and says, you didn't even hear what I said. And you say, yes, I did. You said blah, 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 blah. But they didn't hear that you said it in a sarcastic tone or in a frustrated tone or whatever. So the next level is with that emotion, because there's a big difference between saying, how are you doing today? Fine, versus fine, versus fine. Same word, but with different emotions attached, expresses very different things. So if you can pick up on those, then you'll be better off. The 4th level is on what's not being said. So that's in between the context with the emotions. And the last level is to confirm. Say, hey, Lukey, you sound a little bit frustrated. Is that true? And once they say yes, you got it. You understood it. But if you said, actually, I'm not, I just had a pretty rough day because I spilled my coffee or something like that. Okay, then you can get past it, where they're actually not frustrated at you or the project or whatever. It's because they got a big stain on their shirt or whatever. And you can get better at listening by doing things like active listening. Very simply, eye contact, right? In the North American culture, if you're looking at someone, that's showing respect, that you're actually paying attention. In different cultures, showing respect is looking at their shoes or at the floor or whatever. So just being mindful that the different signs of respect. Sometimes it's just reinforcement. The simple things like, yeah, oh, okay, oh yeah. Those types of words can show that you're engaged. And often summarizing or repeating. So I heard you say this, is that correct? Is that true? Those can be effective tools to help you level up your listening. And with all of these, I'm giving you a whole bunch of different things, but it's a skill. So pick any one of these to practice and improve on as well. And incidentally, if anybody is interested in these slides, you can reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share them with you as well. One thing that I encourage you as you're having these conversations and connecting with people is in the back of your head, ask yourself, how could I help with that? How could I help with that? Every part of the conversation, how can I help with that? And initially you'll be like, I'm not sure, but oftentimes with practice, you'll be able to. And I use ARCS-T or CARTS, if you can't remember that, but I like ARCS-T because it's in order where the different levels of value are attention. And this is the mistake where a lot of folks make in networking, where they automatically assume that, oh, I had a coffee chat with that person, therefore they're going to give me a job. Well, that's level 1. Sorry, that's where you are, level 1, because you gave them your attention, you listen to them, you ask them good questions. But level 2 is resources. Hey, Lukey, did you see this YouTube video? Have you listened to this podcast? Did you read this blog post? I think it would be very helpful based on our conversation. Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be great. How about connections? Hey, have you connected with this guy, Lukey? He's phenomenal. He'll be able to help you with whatever. So connecting people, it often helps too, not just the one person, but the 2 people you're connecting to as well. And the 4th level is your skills. Oh, I can help with that. Yeah, I'm computer science. I can upgrade your web page. Oh, I did marketing. I can help you with a social media post. I can do some research, fill in the blanks, whatever skills that you have, that's really going to be the value add. And then if you don't have any of those, then you have your time. So take an hour, take a half a day and research, based on the conversation we had, how could I help that person? And do what I call the value brainstorm. And we talked about giving. So there's that proverb, the more you give, the more you receive. And if you're not a believer in karma, I call it physics. Does anybody know Newton's third law? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you give, the opposite reaction is receive. Now, if you receive, you're going to have to give back plenty later on. So just be mindful of that as well. It works both ways. And finally, when you get into it, then you have to build, because it's unlikely that that half an hour, 15-minute conversation, unless you're like really good at networking, is going to amount to this person becoming your BFF, or you'll be besties. So oftentimes it takes time to develop that relationship. And oftentimes you can use like a CRM system, an Excel spreadsheet, your calendar to schedule. If you had a coffee chat with that person, could you get an update in 3 months, 5 months? Add some value to them. Do what I call a value brainstorm. And sometimes it's as simple as checking in and saying, oh, how's everything with their dog, their renovation, their school, their work, their whatever it is. And then you share a little bit about you, and try to make a 5-minute favor as a habit. And what that is trying to add value. Any of those things, those ARCs T, one easy way to do it is think of something that helped you this week, today, this month, and share it with 3 people. Hey, I downloaded this app and it was really helpful for me. I thought you'd appreciate it. Something as simple as that can go a long way to build those meaningful connections. And ideally, throughout this whole process, every day, every week, every month, you're taking a couple of minutes to ask yourself, what did I do well? And what could I do better? And you're using that improvement each day, each week, each month to get better and better and better. Oh, so that's what I mentioned before. And you can actually predictively do that, where you can think of, okay, when is the next time I'm going to have a conversation? Oh, I know I have a meeting with someone tomorrow. Okay, I'll make sure to fill in the blanks. So you can consciously improve yourself just by proactively doing it. Now, will you remember each time? Maybe not, but plan to do it, and you'll eventually get there. And as you build those connections, there's actually different levels of connections, where the first level is your contact, right? That goes back to the 500 people you have on LinkedIn, right? You have their contact information, but that's about it, right? Then they become an acquaintance, where you might have exchanged a few messages back and forth, and you kind of know them, they kind of know you, but not really much. Then there's a casual connection, which is level 3, where like you've messaged over time. You might have even had a coffee chat, virtual chat. They got to know you, maybe worked on a little project together. So they start to get to know you. And then level 4 and 5 is really when things get good, when they are basically a colleague, a professional friend. And research has shown that it takes upwards of like 50 hours to do that. Now, that's always an average, because there are some people who become fast friends. And you might have encountered it, where you meet someone, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like we've known each other our entire lives, that sort of thing. Back to that unicorn person. That happens once in a while, but not every time. And the more that you can invest in that relationship, the more that you'll get out of it. Remember, it's farming, not hunting. And the top level is the friend, right? You even drop the professional part of it. And this is someone where you'll help out, right? They call and they need help. Their car breaks down. Oh, sure. Yeah. Give me 20 minutes and I'll be right over, right? That sort of thing. These are people that you'll help and that you're vying for in there. And they're not discrete levels. It's a spectrum. So some people will be closer here and there. And sometimes you can just re-incubate the relationship, because someone who was a friend 10 years ago, they're not a friend right now, but you message them and they're like, oh yeah, Luki, how's everything? Whatever, I've been meaning to reach out to you. And it's like no time has passed. A very helpful tactic to do that is to go grab your smartphone, right? Go to your text messages, scroll all the way down to the oldest message, and say hi to that person. Do it now if you want to. And you'll be curious, because you really only say text people that you kind of know, right? And obviously make sure it's not like a multi-factor authentication or delivery notice or something like that. Make sure it's a person, but say hi to that person. And I know people who've done it. It's like, oh my gosh, Luki, I have like 12 coffee chats next week. I'm like, well, just because you message doesn't mean you have to have a coffee chat next week. You can do it next month, next in the fall or whatever. But just be mindful of that. It can be a very helpful tool just to incubate those dormant connections. And an element of building it is that value brainstorm, right? So I talk about the ARCS-T framework, and these are just some things that you could potentially do, right? And the more time that you invest in other folks, the better. So I have a question on any advice on industries where there's a larger age gap. I find it's difficult to connect with people in the industry because of age differences. And I'm guessing this person is more senior and older. Is that where the question is? But in that case, at the end of the day, they are a person, right? Now, oftentimes the senior executives, they are very busy, right? So to even get on their calendar, you want to be mindful of their time. So that's where preparing, having good questions, and doing research is really important. The fact that you are very respectful of their time will make them want to spend more time with you, right? Versus can you tell me about your journey or what you like most about your job? Meanwhile, it's on the about section on my LinkedIn, and it's the last post that I've done. If you're not even taking the time to do that, then it doesn't show care and doesn't show interest in that. So each person is slightly different, but in that, just take a shot. One thing in networking that I like to use, whether you're introvert or an extrovert, there's a Wayne Gretzky quote: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Right? So reaching out to that senior executive and them not responding, if you don't send it out, well, you're missing that shot. And my corollary or follow on to that is the answer is already no. So why not ask? So the answer could be yes. So in this case, like, you're already not having coffee, you're already not getting advice from that director of whatever. So the best thing that you can do is to have that conversation. And if the answer is no, they're not available, you're no worse off. But what if the answer is yes? So that's essentially one of the last things. And what I encourage you to all do is to take some of this guidance, take some of that advice, and do it. Right. So this is the challenge with a lot of these sessions: is you all get rah rah, yeah, Luki was awesome, he told me all this great stuff, and then if I follow up with you next week and ask, did you do any of it? It's like, nope. So I want you to pick one thing and then put it on your calendar and do it. So block it off. Maybe it's later today, maybe it's on the weekend, maybe it's whatever. Maybe it's reaching out to someone, maybe it's revamping your LinkedIn or connecting with that former classmate or whatever, or maybe it's messaging. Maybe it's right now. You can go and text that person, hey, how's it going? And if you're on the 0 or the negative side of the introversion scale, start by just saying hi. Just go up to people, and your goal today is to say hi to 10 people. Again, this or this. You think it's awkward, but it's not. And you've had those conversations. You talk to someone's like, hi, and then you just keep on walking. How's it going? Good. And then you keep walking. So then from that hi to an introduction, then continuing on the conversation, and maybe even reaching out to folks that you that you knew before, right? And try to re-engage in those conversations, because it's only weird because you're making it weird. People actually love to have people reach out. Like, imagine someone out of the blue reaches out to you and says, hey, Luki, how's it going? We haven't connected in 5 years. One of the LinkedIn messages that I was going back for, it was a message that I forgot to answer 9 years ago. And I responded to him, and he said, so sorry, I missed this. I'm not sure. How's everything? Blah, 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 blah. And he says, well, Luki, I mean, if you're connecting after 9 years of missing a message, then we should probably chat. So I had lunch with him last year, and we ended up connecting each other with some good folks. So it was a very fruitful conversation. But again, going back to where you are. So for some of you who are a little bit more adventurous, you might be able to talk to more people or have different goals. For some of you are on the much more shy side, then you will want to start with something as simple as 10 highs every day, and then advance it. So just like you're practicing your violin, get a little bit better, make a little bit more challenging song there. So we covered a lot. Hopefully introversion and what it is and what it isn't. It's really your energy and where you get it, right? That doesn't mean that you're shy. And one thing that you can do is actually change your identity and say, yes, you're an introvert, and I'm on my way to be more outgoing. just by giving yourself that label, just by giving yourself that permission can be super helpful. We talked about networking, building meaningful connections, and some ways to level up your network skills. And my hope is that each and every one of you will now have something in your plan that will make you a little bit better on the networking side and will still keep you as an introvert, but make you a little less shy and a little bit more outgoing. So that's me. For those who are interested, I'd love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me put mine, .com/in. So for those that are interested in Connect, feel free to, I'm happy to share the slides as well. And as Anne mentioned before, I also have a YouTube channel. So I focus on what you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. So if you want to, hit subscribe and hit that bell icon and all that good stuff, I would appreciate that. And I actually run what I call the Focus Inspired Academy, which is your career confidence gym. So I basically take all these things and have you sweat a little bit and work out. So I have like a networking gym, like an interview gym, applications, even a purpose gym, right? For those of you who are looking for a little bit more purposeful careers. So I'm happy to take questions. But if you have any, but in lieu of that, I would love for a feedback speed round where if you want to type in the chat, what is one word, one concept, or one thing that you will make sure that you will do? And if you want to make a public commitment, I will make sure to blah. You can put it on the chat and publicly profess that. So if you want to share what was most memorable about this event, I would love to do that. And if you have any questions, then Anne and I will take a look and answer that. So thank you so much for your time on this Wednesday afternoon. And yeah, hopefully all of you will become better networkers, even if you're an introvert. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lukey. That was wonderful. I'm going to give you a round of applause. We still have a bit of time. So if it's okay, Lukey, I have some questions or comments, and
of course,
I know folks in the chat have some questions as well. But if I can just, express my gratitude for this very practical information. This was amazing, and I learned a lot. I hope others who are participating learned a lot as well. One thing I would like to add to this, Lukey, is that as an introvert myself, which is surprising for a lot of folks, I think that it's so important to recognize that I think we need to celebrate ourselves as introverts. And we need both introverts and extroverts in this world. We need all different kinds of personalities to get things done. And I think, unfortunately, in society, Lukey, I would argue that extroversion is celebrated as the thing. But really, if you imagine a world without introverts, I mean, there would be a lot of problems. So I think, again, we need to celebrate ourselves as introverts and folks who find these social interactions challenging. But again, like you were saying, like the whole theme, right? Like our introversion is our superpower. And there's so much that we can do with it. For me, my introversion has helped me in a lot of ways, and that certainly it's challenging a lot of times, and it's taken me lots of practice, but it also my introversion makes me a better listener. Like I'm genuinely interested in hearing other people's stories. And I'm actually more comfortable, even though I'm doing a lot of talking now, listening to other people's stories than talking about myself. And that way that strengthens relationships compared to maybe an extrovert who's more comfortable, talking about themselves. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Robin. So definitely, celebrating our differences and our unique qualities. I just wanted to add that. And so if we can maybe take a few questions from the chat, Lukey, are we okay with that? Because I'm trying to go back and see, do you want me to pull some up for you? Do you want to just pick and choose for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, if you can field the questions, I do see one here. And I guess before we do, I know, Anne, you wanted to see if we could take a picture with folks as well. So for those that are willing and able, if you can turn on your cameras and just say hi, be part of that. So I think Anne wanted something that she could share on her social media. So if you want to be part of the event, Anne, do you want me to stop share? Do you want me to stop sharing or?
Yeah, I think that would make sense. We've never done this before. This is a social experiment. I'm just kidding. We've never done this before. I'm just trying to make the most of this because also, everyone, I would like to announce that thanks to all of you, we've had a record number of participants in this panel. So we've been having these for over a year now, and we've never had this many participants. That's part of the reason why I'd like to take a photo of this. And I want to celebrate all of you again for joining us. So I'm not going to take a picture. Carla, are you out there?
I'm here, yes,
Hi,
and
Carla.
hi. Just 1 second. I just want to make sure I'm grabbing enough print screens
Thanks,
here
everyone.
with everybody. 1 minute,
Thanks,
please.
Carla.
Of course. This is exciting.
It is exciting. This is a first for us. Yeah,
Mhm.
just let me know when I'll stop talking. And thanks for those who turned your camera on. Again, totally optional. If you don't want to share, it's absolutely fine. Just kind of fun.
And then Carla, is there going to be like a 3, 2, 1 countdown or something or?
Sure, I can do that. I'm just kind of setting up my page here. Okay, sure. If everyone can just smile, I guess. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks for Luki for asking, reminding us that we were doing that. I almost forgot. So thanks everyone who let us take a photo. Now, again, back to those questions. Let's take a look. Luki, did you want to, you said you'd like me to pull some questions, but then you said that you had a question.
Yeah, I had one that was that I saw at the top where it was related to, well, a lot of these tools are helpful in person, but what about on LinkedIn? And I actually like to say that because a lot of folks, they're online, they're like, oh, what do I say? How do I talk to this person? How do I, whatever it is? The same tools that I mentioned are the same that you use online. The big challenge is again in your head because online you have the delete button, right? You have ChatGPT, you have Grammarly, you have AI in order to wordsmith and change it and all that. So one tool that I would encourage you to think about is imagine that this person that you're talking to is right in front of you and give yourself 2 minutes to send whatever it is and then send it off. Because that's what would happen in real life, right? You would do it. Now, what most people, they're in their heads and they're trying to have this perfect answer, this perfect response, this perfect whatever, delete, chat GPT, no, say this better, say this nicer, say this whatever. And you're like, okay, is it is good enough? Is whatever. And then some of you, especially if any of you identify as like a perfectionist or have a little bit of imposter syndrome, that too, then that makes it even worse because like what if? And then you're like, oh, then I have like 5 minutes to hit the edit button so I can change it because I didn't like what I want there. So if you give yourself the 2 minutes and say, okay, I did what I could, and then when it's done, reflect and learn and improve, right? So just like in an actual event, take the same sort of tools and apply it online. So that's one of the suggestions. The big part is just getting out of your own head and doing instead of waiting. So that's the one question that I saw. And if folks, again, you're able to put in more questions. So there's a question here: in a job fair environment, any suggestions on how to start a conversation with recruiters at the booth? Any advice to get recruiters' attention to my job portfolio? Okay, so multi-part question. So in a job fair environment, again, a lot of the same sort of things, building that rapport. The recruiters, the employers at these fairs are there to find great qualified candidates, right? They're looking to land a job, to fill a role, right? So they want to talk to people. And oftentimes it's building rapport and having a conversation. So it could be as simple as whatever company, oh, I love your poster here. Could you tell me a little bit more about the company? I've heard about it before, but I don't know too much about it. Can you tell me a little bit more? So anything like that. It's similar to your icebreakers, your conversation starters in there, but instead of asking about like the weather or whatever, you're asking about the company. And then it's your skill in terms of navigating the conversation. So the second part of the question, any advice to get recruiters' attention to my job portfolio? Well, oftentimes they will ask because they're at a fair because they want to look at people and their candidates. So depending on what you're able to share about your experience, then you can get them to pay attention. And oftentimes it's that advanced preparation. If you have some good Lego blocks and these interesting assemblage of stuff, these great stories that are emotional and they pique their interest, then you'll be more someone that they'll be more interested in, right? So if there's specifics that you have, we can do it. But in generalities, it's showcasing your value. Why should they hire you? Why should they look at your portfolio? And if you have answers to those questions, then that's essentially what you want to share during the event. So hopefully that's useful. But if folks have specific questions, I can give more specific responses. But in generalities, that's what you do. And you probably want to add to that?
Yes, just briefly. Thank you for that question. I didn't see in the chat who asked that, but our next real talk, which will be happening in September, will be on job fairs, preparing for job fairs, because we're actually planning a hiring, like a career expo late October for all of you folks who are out there. Now that you're signed up and supported, you will be notified of these, but definitely, you know, this will provide more information. If I can just add quickly, Lukey, that the other tricky thing about job fairs is that some folks expect that they're going there because people are, like you're saying, Lukey, people are looking to hire people. And I would argue a lot of people aren't, you know, they're just there to promote, you know, their cell phone company or like their services. And it's a big downer. Like, and I'm just thinking, like, I've gone to so many and I have as a participant. So just be open-minded to the fact that, I mean, yeah, it's true. You never know who you're going to meet there, but don't be prepared. I did recently the devil's advocate, absolutely mindset. That don't have in your head that you'll go there and get a job, that all these folks are actually actively hiring. Some of them are not, but just be open to that. But every opportunity to meet people in person is an opportunity to network. So I just want to add that. Lukey, I'm aware of the time. We have 4 minutes left. Do you want to grab some more questions from the chat? These are really good questions. So many.
Yeah, there's one question that I saw is they agree that extroversion is more celebrated, but how do I stop letting insecurity about my shyness prevent me from practicing? Right. So that's probably a whole other workshop. Like I mentioned, I have one on mindset. But what comes to mind is a quote. And if you get to know me, you know that I love quotes. So this quote is from, I guess, professional development guru Jim Rohn. And he says something to the effect of, in life, we suffer in 2 pains, the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Right? The difference is the pain of discipline weighs ounces, the pain of regret weighs tons, right? So the discipline of you practicing and getting to that, it hurts, it's not fun, but it'll be ounces. Whereas, what if you didn't practice? How much will you kick yourself when you're 65, you're 92, and you're like towards the end that you didn't do it? That you didn't reach out, that you didn't attend the event, that you didn't go to Toastmasters, that you didn't fill in the blank, right? So oftentimes it just takes that 5 seconds of courage. And there's actually something called the 5-second rule. And it's not the one where you drop food on the floor and you pick it up before it gets dirty. This 5-second rule is basically, it comes from psychology and neuroscience, where it's called a pattern interrupt, where you basically out loud or in your head count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then Nike. Does anybody know Nike's slogan?
Just do it.
Just do it. Whatever it is that you want to do, so it's practice in your head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then turn on the recording and do it. Go in front of the mirror and do it. And again, it's probably not shyness. It's something else. It's a fear of judgment. Is often what it is.
And oftentimes, Lukey, people don't care. Like, I know that sounds really harsh, but because all my life, you know, I've been trying to get over this, you know, being introvert, like it was some kind of an affliction, you know. I've taken all these classes to try to get me out there and just fighting it, you know, instead of like embracing it, like, and now that like I've accepted this is just part of who I am. And putting myself out there in ways that I feel comfortable and just keep on practicing, I'm okay with that. Like, you finally get to a place where you're like, you know what? I can't change myself. And that's okay. I'm great the way I am. but there are ways that I can, but you know, and people don't care. Like people really don't care. Most people are just so into themselves, they don't care, right? So like if you can sort of get out of that mind from being so self-conscious, they don't care. Especially in a big city like this, if you're living in, they really don't care. Go on the subway. You'll see people don't care. I just wanted to add to that, Lukey. And
Yep.
again, we have 1 minute left.
Yep.
So I think maybe, so Lukey, if I can propose something,
Mhm.
so what we'll do is we'll take a transcript of this amazing presentation. So, and then that will include all of the questions in the chat. I'll compile the list of questions that have not been answered, and then I'll send them to you. And if you get a chance to answer them, that would be great. If you don't, you know, obviously this is something I can speak to as well. We'll make sure to share those answers on our page. Does that work for you, Lukey? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'd like to take, there's one more question, which I think, well, there's a lot more. The one that I see here is, can you talk about being socially awkward? Right. And to me, being socially awkward is just not enough practice, right? You're at the stage where you're playing the violin and you're like, that's what socially awkward is, right? You just started and you're doing that. Now, the challenge is some people, when they practice the same thing over and over again, versus if folks are familiar with the 10,000 hour rule, there's a rule that in order to become world class at something, you have to spend about 10,000 hours worth of practice. Now, I'm not asking you to practice networking for 10,000 hours, because what there is most people don't actually appreciate there's something called the 25-hour rule. And what the 25-hour rule is, with just 25 hours worth of practice, you can get good enough, right? So to become a 10 out of 10, that takes 10,000 hours. But to become a 5 out of 10, even from a 0, that only takes 25 hours, right? And with that little bit of practice, a little bit investment, but it's the right practice that you need to do, right? Because some people will just reach out and mass send things on LinkedIn or just have coffee chats and stuff. But if you're not consciously taking that point to improve each time, that's why that reflection part of what did you do well and what could you do better? And if each day you have a 1% increase, then over the course of a year, that's a 37 times increase. That's not a 37%, that's 3,700%. And you can do the math. That's basically compound interest, right? So a little bit of effort at the beginning seems like nothing. It's like, okay, fine. Yes, I smiled and said hi. Yes, I did this. Yes, I did that. But after a week of doing it, after a month, after a year of doing it, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm like talking to people and we're having good conversations. And you can't expect to go from 0 to 100 right away, right? Just like folks, if you know, like mountain climbing, if you actually go from like ground level to the top of Mount Everest, you'll die because you need to get acclimatized to the breathing. So you have to go up and then down and then up and then down and then up and down. So for those of you who are socially awkward, just understand that that's part of the process. That's growth, right? And I like to tell people that me as a coach, my job is usually two things. One is to ask good questions and test assumptions, right? And the other part is to make you uncomfortable. And the main reason why is because when you're comfortable, you're not growing, you're not learning, you're not getting better, right? So I encourage you to embrace that discomfort and even relabel it. This is not me being uncomfortable. This is me learning to be better. So it's like, oh, there it is again, discomfort. I mean, learning. Just rephrase it and change the perspective. And you'll go from socially awkward to socially adept to the life of the party in no time flat, right? But it does take a little bit of effort and it will be uncomfortable. I guarantee that. And if it's not uncomfortable, you're not doing it right. But it's that change in perspective to that this is learning instead of discomfort. But yeah, I really appreciate your time. Thank you to U of T and Anne and Carla for hosting this event. Thank you so much for all the folks that joined and the 100 people that stayed until the end. Really appreciate everybody here. I think I saw like 160 odd folks at peak time or even more.
182, Lukey.
82? Okay, sorry.
Record.
Appreciate that. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the day. And feel free to connect. If I can be of help, then let me know, because this is the stuff that I love to do. And if I can be of help to you in your career success, then let me know. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks, Lukey. We'll be in touch very shortly. Thank you.
Take care.
Good day. Bye, everyone.